Hello, we are here to do an interview with Mark Toomey, owner of Infonomics Australia, and this interview is an initiative of itSMF Spain trying to disseminate standards and best practices about corporate governance of information technology. These standards enable the transformation that is needed as a result of digitization in all areas of the society and all productive sectors: banking, industry, services, politics, entertainment, social, non-profit organization, everywhere. We hope this interview will to be useful for all of you, and this interview will be conducted by Carlos Francavilla, that is here with us. Hello, Carlos.
Hello everybody.
And with me, Manuel Caño. Okay. This one. Okay, we have with us to Mark Toomey. Hello, Mark Toomey, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Manuel.
Okay, Mark Toomey is recognized internationally as a leader expert in the top-level leadership and governance of information technology on ISO IEC 38500. He is a past chair of the committee responsible for Australian standards and governance and management of IT, and was Australia's lead representative to the corresponding international committee during the time when ISO 38500 was developed. In August 2012, his work was recognized with the Australian IT industry's highest award, ICT Professional of the Year. So, Mark writes and speaks extensively about how business leaders can govern IT. His publications include The Director's IT Compass and Waltzing with the Elephant, probably the most the most audience, a comprehensive guide to corporate governance of information technology. Through his company Infonomics, he helps leaders understand and improve their organization's governance of IT and expand the skills of consultants who help their clients improve governance of IT. Okay. Mark, as a special offer linked to this interview, has a detail for the listeners of this interview. Mark has offered a discount of his book, Waltzing with the Elephant, in PDF format, priced at $50 instead of usual price of $60. You must only follow the link that appears below. This offer is only valid for 1 week from the interview date. Okay, thank you very much, Mark, for this detail.
That's my pleasure, Manuel, and I should say that people who wish to buy the book can buy it in either the English or the Spanish translation version. Okay,
great. Okay, let's start the interview. So, first of all, there is a number of paradoxes that CIOs and CIOs currently are not able to clarify. Here, Mark, are some sentences. Can you help us to clarify them? For example, the business itself will be the IT department. Technologists will simply be the enabler, said Brandon Borko, Chief Technology and Solution Architect of Northrop Grumman. What do you think about, Mark?
I think Brandon is very, very right in what he says. I think a very useful analogy for understanding this is the motor car. When the motor car was first invented, most people stayed away, and it was the domain of engineers and enthusiasts. But today, the engineers and the enthusiasts are still there, but they're in the background, and everybody knows what a motor car is and knows what it's for and how to use it, and nearly everybody can drive one. I think exactly the same thing is happening right now with information technology, that it has moved from the domain of the engineers and specialists out into the space of the people who actually use the information technology, and that's in the business and in the social environment, where the people who use the IT are actually making the decisions about what they will use it for and how they will use it. And so what Brandon Tocco is saying is absolutely correct.
Okay. Next, cloud, big data, social network, bring your own device, mobile, Internet of Things, and the CIO worried with the operation of existing systems. What's happened there?
It's very interesting, and all of these words that you use are the IT industry's words, and they're technology babble that confuses the people who are using the information technology. For a business person or a person in a social environment, cloud simply means that I can access IT services wherever I want, whenever I want. Big data means that I can discover a lot of new things about my customers and my market. Social network means that I can connect to anybody, anywhere, anytime. And so these are the things that the business leaders and the business managers and the community are thinking about. And the CIO hasn't, in a lot of cases, yet realized that the CIO is no longer in control. What the CIO needs to do is understand the business and user perspective on all of these new technologies, and at the same time put in place the means of making sure that while they are being well used, the underlying systems that are still essential are still working correctly. So the CIO does have a role to play still in the operation of existing systems, but that is only a part of the question, and the CIO has to deal with a great deal more now.
Okay, next. How can we maintain current systems, cost down, and encourage innovation? Do you see necessary the emergence of the CDO, the Chief Digital Officer?
I think that there are going to be attempts to shift the role of IT into something new. We see references to Chief Digital Officer, we see references to Chief Innovation Officer, we see references to Chief Marketing Officer. I think they are all going to be transitionary roles, because the reality is that most of the decisions that have to be made about IT are whole of business decisions, and they are going to need to be made by people in their normal management roles. If we think about human resources in the same way, we have heads of human resources in most medium and large companies. And the head of human resources doesn't actually do any of the work assignments for people or any of the performance evaluations. What the head of human resources does is make sure that everybody has a work assignment and that everybody gets their performance appraisal at the right time. And I think that the role, rather than a Chief Digital Officer, we're going to see the role of the Chief Information Officer progressively evolve into one where it is, in fact, a proper organ of the governance system of the organisation, similar to the head of HR and the Chief Financial Officer, where the CIO enforces the rules of the organisation, but doesn't necessarily dream up all of the strategies of the organisation.
All right. Okay, another paradox. Only in Europe, we have 950,000 people with IT skills are needed in the next 5 years. But every year, universities are seeing how the number of students is falling. What's happened there?
Well, unfortunately, the same thing is happening in Australia, and some of the universities have actually closed down their IT courses. It's quite astonishing because I think we all understand that information technology is fundamental to our future, but somehow the message is going out to young people that they won't have a valuable career in the IT space. I think that there's a number of factors that are driving that, certainly in Australia, and I have heard it from young people myself, that the prevalence of outsourcing means that if you start a career in IT, you're going to lose your job as you become more experienced and therefore more expensive. And so why would anybody want to start a job that is going to have no future? That on its own is a wake-up call for business leaders to say that you need to recognise that capable IT people are an essential part of the future, and you need to give young people the message that they actually will be needed and they will be valued. I think a second element that contributes here is that very often the picture that is painted of a career in IT is one of very deep technical specialisation. That's a silly picture these days, because really everybody who takes a job in business is going to need IT skills, and some of them will need skills, for example, in doing graphic arts. Some of them will need skills in using particular software tools to design and develop business. Mm-hmm. The range of IT skills that will be needed is in fact exploding. Mm-hmm. And we're not seeing universities offering the full range of skills that they need. I think that a lot of university curriculum is designed by people who are still living in the world of the 1970s, 80s and 90s, rather than people who live in the first half of the 21st century.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now we are going to, this is some paradoxes, we are going to start with the questions. Okay, first question. Over these years, and with the use of ISO 38500, have we improved present and future use of information technology by organizations? Or do you think that we still are feeding the statistics of Standish Group Chaos report about failed IT projects? Where we are?
The timing of this question is just perfect. I received just on Friday of last week a report prepared for the Australian government entitled A Review of Project Governance Effectiveness in Australia. And this report says that on average 48% of projects fail to meet their baseline time, cost and quality objectives. Now that's exactly the same base for measure that Standish use, mm-hmm. and Standish have been finding that roughly 50% of projects have failed on those measures for the last 20 odd years. So it would appear on the surface of this that we haven't actually improved a great deal at all. In fact, the report goes on to say that only a 10% improvement has been achieved in the last 20 years. So I think that we have presented in ISO 38500 some very useful guidance for organisations, but we're not seeing any significant improvement in performance. And if we dig underneath that, the reason that we're not improving the performance is that the problem that causes IT to go wrong is in fact poor governance. But all of the effort that goes to fixing IT goes to the next level down of the management and implementation and operational techniques. And all of the studies that I have done have shown that, and the report that I'm referring to also shows that the cause of failure is almost always a governance cause rather than a management cause. And it's very interesting to look at what is happening in South Africa right now. The South African government has just adopted a new approach to governance and management of IT. And the report that describes how or why they are doing this basically begins by saying that the government of South Africa has made a number of attempts in the past to improve its success with IT, and every one of those attempts to improve the success of IT has failed because the changes that were necessary at the top levels of governance and management have not happened. And so this time, the government of South Africa is going out and saying, before we attempt to do anything at the management level, we are going to fix the problem at the governance level. And I think that's the key message that everybody needs to understand, and that's the thing that's going to change the statistics that Standish put out.
Okay. Carlos, your turn.
Mark, the changing technology and its evolution, adoption are going so fast right now in the organization, and probably not able to keep the disruption rate that is going on. Do you think that the standard can help these organizations that they are seeing that the business model is dying in order to transform themselves? What do you think about it?
I think that ISO 38500 has very, very specific and relevant messages for these organizations, and it's basically tied up in the first two principles of ISO 38500. The responsibility question: if an organization is in a market that is being disrupted by new entrants and new competitors, the organization can't wait for the IT function to realize that there is a business problem. That's actually the job of the business leaders, to realize that there's a business problem and a business opportunity. And so ISO 38500 basically provides the impetus for an organization to plan ahead and change its assignments of responsibility so that business leaders are clearly responsible and clearly taking control of the situation when there is a disruptive change or opportunity. The second principle goes to strategy and planning, and basically it's saying that organizations need to actually think about what the role is of IT in their business strategy, and rather than developing a business plan that is agnostic to IT, they need to develop a business plan that says IT is now changing the rules of the market, and so what do we expect other players to do with IT to change the market and attack us, and how can we use IT to take an advantage and redefine the market and attack our competitors in a way that they won't be able to respond quickly. So ISO 38500 is basically saying, stop looking at IT from the supply side, look at it from the business demand and the business use side, and get your assignments of responsibility right so that you can drive out a strategy that is an effective strategy for using information technology as a tool of competitive advantage.
Then, standard ISO 38500, Mark, can help us to identify what changes will be consolidated and what changes will be ignored in relation to the disruptive changes in IT?
Well, the way I read this question, we're talking about the changes in the marketplace, and really ISO 38500 is standing aloof from the detail of information technology. It's the principles and the guidance in ISO 38500 apply just as much today as they did when we first developed them in Australia in 2003 and 4. And I think that they're going to still apply just as effectively in 2023. They're like the Proverbs, they're like the Ten Commandments. They are guiding the way that organisations behave rather than prescribing any of the methods and techniques that you use or any of the IT structures and tools that you would choose to implement. So I think that ISO 38500 is actually very stable and therefore extremely useful because an organisation can adopt ISO 38500 as a guiding light for how to make decisions about IT in confidence that it's not going to change dramatically. There is in fact a review underway at the moment of ISO 38500 that in a year or so may lead to a minor revision being published. But I know that the team working on that is very much focused on very fine tuning and refinement and clarification rather than any change in the basic message that goes out with the standard.
Okay. Carlos, go ahead.
Now, today entrepreneurs are in all the newspapers. Do you think that the standard can help the startup because they have a very big IT component in the enterprise?
Yeah, I do. In fact, I think that a lot of the startups are unconsciously doing what ISO 38500 would want us to do. What we see in a startup is leaders who have a very clear understanding of what their role is to lead the organisation. We see strategy that is very much established with a clear understanding of what information technology is all about. And we see the other four principles in ISO 38500 actually being lived out. And I think it's really, really interesting that we can look at startups and the behaviour of entrepreneurs and see that they are subconsciously doing exactly what the standard says that they should do. And yet it seems to be so difficult for long-established organisations to actually adopt the same behaviours.
Then, for startups and freelancers, do you think that, for example, the IKEA concept and its furniture do-it-yourself management can be applied in the near future to IT? We can see, you take the furniture from IKEA, you take from the store, you get to your home, and you build your own furniture. Do you think that the IT can do more or less the same?
I think that it's happening now. I don't think it's a near future thing. I think it's a current day thing. And I think that it's happening in exactly the model that IKEA would suggest, and that is that it's the people at the coalface, the people who use the IT, who are actually doing it themselves to build the IT capability that they need. And the reason that I say that is because there is so much that is now available on the web with software as a service and so on, that if somebody wants to set up a mailing list and send out a news bulletin, for example, to all of that department's customers, they can just log onto the web and put a credit card number in and get access off MailChimp or Constant Contact or any one of a dozen other providers, and they are doing it themselves. And the message here for the IT department is that they've lost control, and they are never ever going to get that control back. So the IT function and the whole organisation needs to reset its thinking on who makes decisions about IT and how they make decisions about IT. And for example, the IT function, instead of trying to control everything and make all of the decisions itself, needs to help the people who are now making the decisions to make good decisions. And that's about educating them and informing them and guiding them and helping them and being there as part of their journey. So I think that the IKEA concept for do-it-yourself information technology is actually a reality today.
Yeah, you mean learning instead of controlling? Sorry, instead of learning, helping instead of controlling?
Helping and supporting and assisting and guiding are the sorts of words that need to become the normal words for IT rather than the controlling notion that we've had in the past.
Okay, great. Carlos, go ahead, please.
Do you think that the standard can help any CEO that has in mind the standard to run the organization and operate the business? Is this right? This is a good hypothesis.
Yeah, this is a situation that I've had experience with a number of my customers. Often the discussion, and I have this even in the last couple of days. I mentioned to somebody that I meet who's, in this case, it was a director of a company who was just standing in as the managing director on a temporary basis. And I met this gentleman on an aeroplane flying home from Canberra last week. And I said to him that I specialise in governance of IT. And he said, well, I don't know anything about IT. I've got the technology department to look after all of that for me. And I said, there, of course, is the problem that everybody encounters, because the executives and the directors just basically turn away whenever they're confronted by IT. Whereas the problem that they need to be able to address is not the detailed inner workings of the IT, but how the organisation plans and manages its use of IT. And the tool that I've developed, that I use with my customers, is an 84-point diagnostic that I've developed straight off ISO 38500. And in that diagnostic, I describe a lot of behaviours that are the good management and boardroom behaviours of organisations, and the capabilities of organisations, and the performance of organisations that are actually very good at governing IT. And I run the CEO through those, asking them to think about how closely their organisation matches the statements that I'm making. And invariably, the CEO finds that their organisation doesn't match those statements particularly well at all. But while we're doing that, the CEO is also being exposed to a new way of thinking about IT, where they are understanding that directing and controlling IT has nothing to do with the decisions about what database manager or what CPU or how much memory. They're decisions about how the organisation will actually operate itself and make its decisions and build its capability to compete in the 21st century. So a CEO can use this tool to first become familiar with really the messages that are in the standard and what good governance of IT is all about. And then the CEO can use the same tool to go to the rest of the organisation and find out where everybody else is in their thinking about IT, and that gives a baseline, a start point for working out how to then improve the business control of IT.
Okay.
Manuel, we have two questions, and I think that we are running out of time. Do you prefer to ask the question of the audience to Mark, or going ahead with the interview?
Up to you, Manuel.
We can, because I have not seen any kind of, if the audience can give us any questions, please give us in the, in the questions. Let's check.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see two questions.
Yeah, some time ago I posted the following question to Professor Van Grenberger. What are MBA students taught about all this? Are we preaching to the choir?
That's a wonderful question. I think everybody needs to go to UPM, where Jose Carrillo is teaching ISO 38500 to his MBA students. Unfortunately, I think that a lot of universities are still teaching outdated thinking that is based in the idea that the IT department is in control of and making all of the decisions about IT. I think that this is going to change, but I think that we're only seeing the leading thinkers in universities making that change at the moment, and it's going to be another perhaps 2 to 5 years before the mainstream universities actually wake up to the change.
Okay, next question. So, do you agree that it is corporate governance of IT rather than IT governance? These names again.
Yeah. The terminology is a real challenge, and I would like to think that we can actually find a new way of discussing the decision-making frameworks around IT. I don't have an answer to that problem yet, but certainly what I think is imperative is that we understand that the directing and controlling of IT is now a business leadership responsibility rather than something that just lives on inside the IT department. And we also need to be very clear that governance of IT is in fact about policy and strategy and responsibility, not about the detailed management activities, which are what some parts of the IT industry tend to call IT governance.
No, previous one. Okay, IT apparently is lowering prices, but this is becoming more and more necessary. What is the evolution that you think it may have from now? IT will be competitive and expensive. IT will remain as a commodity and affordable for all, and will not represent any competitive advantage, or IT will be a mix of commodity for trivial uses of technology and a tool for competitiveness through innovation in product, service, and management.
I think that the mix is inevitable. I think that there will continue to be a lot more of the routine IT that becomes very much the commodity, and we see that today with tablets and mobile phones and PCs and so on. But there's no question that a lot of new business capability is enabled by IT, and the innovation that is necessary is going to continue to drive demand for some new technology and new creation. I think we've still got a lot of new technology development to happen, and we're going to see organisations still investing heavily in IT, even though the price of the commodity components is getting cheaper and cheaper.
Okay, Carlos, your turn.
10 years ago, Nicholas Carr said, IT doesn't matter. IT is a commodity that everybody can buy in any shop. But you, Jean-Charles, and many more say that IT is on the heart of the business. We think that this is a paradox. Who is right? You and many more.
It's a really great paradox, and I think that the key to it is to look at the analogy that Nicholas Carr used. He said that IT was like electricity, and that it just doesn't matter anymore. Now, if we think about electricity, and we say that electricity doesn't matter, and we stop inventing around the electricity space, then we wouldn't have most of the technologies that we have today, because electricity became a commodity many, many years ago, but we continue to develop things that use electricity. So if we think about IT as the physical goods, the equipment, yeah, it's a commodity and it doesn't matter. But if we think about IT as the things that we do in business that exploit those physical technologies, that's not a commodity. That's the product of business vision and innovation and dreaming, and that is still incredibly important. So we no longer need to worry about how do we create the technology, but we do need to worry about what do we do with the technology.
Mm-hmm. Next question, Mark. We are a little bit running out of time, so I'm going to ask you, Mark, please short the answers. Please, Mark, tell us in a few short sentences what should be the cycle of adoption of the ISO 38500 standard in a normal organization, if such a thing exists. Okay, in a normal business.
That's actually very easy. The first thing is for the senior executive management to understand what the standard is saying, and for the board to understand the same thing. The next step is to measure how well the organisation currently performs, and then on the back of the measurement to begin a program of change, and out of that program of change I would expect to see an organisation have an overarching charter for governance of IT and 6 policies for governance of IT that align to the principles in ISO 38500. And then I would expect the organisation to fine-tune its management systems so that they conform to that charter for governance and to those policies. And it's as simple as that.
Thank you very much for the clear and short answer. Let's go ahead, Carlos.
Yeah. Right now we are in a collapsing world. Physical products are going every day digitalized. Do you think that the board of a company can do this job without any IT skills in the room?
I think the boards that don't have some understanding of IT are now at risk, very, very seriously at risk. I think that as a short-term measure, boards should bring somebody in who has a good understanding of IT from a business leadership and governance perspective. And I think that boards should invest in developing their own skills so that they can understand IT more broadly in the boardroom. Again, not from a technical detail perspective, but from the perspective of how you use technology effectively to create and maintain business advantage and business performance.
People and technology solutions increasingly are in rapid change in their tastes and behaviors, causing market leaders from now disappear from the minds of consumers in a period of 3 years, more or less. On the other hand, standards and frameworks have a maturity period of not less than 3-4 years. Don't you think that the good practices world and rules have very few reaction capacity against the social and economical changes?
I think this is something that we touched on before when we said that ISO 38500 in particular stands high up with principles and broad guidance that really is immune to the impact of change at the detail level. And I think that if we see that same philosophy adopted by more standards, then they're going to remain quite relevant as the market changes underneath them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, last one for you, Carlos.
Yeah. Strategic planning was thinking always in about 5 years, but right now we have almost immediately planning horizon. Can we make planning in IT for 3 or more years right now?
The answer to that is yes, we can, and no, we cannot. The reason that I say both is that IT should be working to a vision of the future which is highly adaptable to the changes that are going on around the organization. The old idea was that we stepped IT forward in 5-year chunks. We had a vision for 5 years and we didn't change from it, even though the world changed around us. Now we have a business vision, and the business vision might be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years out, and IT needs to work to the same vision and the same timetable. And if the business is adapting and changing dynamically, then the IT needs to change just as dynamically. And the big challenge in here, I think, is not so much for the IT function to learn new behavior, but for the business leadership to understand that there are different rules for engagement and different rules for funding of IT that is highly flexible compared to IT that operates on very fixed plans.
Okay, Mark, thank you very much for your replies and your willingness to do this interview. We are. One last question, please. When are you going back to Buenos Aires or going back to Madrid? Are you planning?
Both of those opportunities just need a business plan, don't they? And the good news is that the Australian dollar is reducing in value right now.
Okay.
So perhaps the opportunity is emerging for us to make the business case that means we can do it.
Anyhow, Mark, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your knowledge and to share with us. And
it's a pleasure. Do we have any more questions from the audience?
No, I haven't any more questions. We have only 2, and that's you have replied both. Again, thank you very much, and we hope to see you soon over here, or we can go to the Australia. Probably, as the unemployment is in Spain, probably we are going to go to Australia to work.
Yes. Well, I wish that I could wave a magic wand for that problem.
Okay. See you soon, Mark. See you, Carlos. Bye.
Thank you, Manuel. And thank you, Carlos.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.